Hey there, listeners. Hola, amigos. Before we dive into today's episode, we have a very small favour to ask. If you enjoy our podcast and want to help us to keep bringing you great content, the best way to support us is by leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts. It only takes a minute, but it makes a huge difference because your ratings and reviews help more listeners to discover our show. And it keeps us motivated to continue doing what we love and bringing you more content for free. Plus, we love hearing your feedback. So if you have a moment, head over to Apple Podcasts, give us a rating, and leave a very quick review. Thank you so much for your support. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Welcome to the Costa Property Podcast, the podcast that turns your dreams of owning a piece of paradise on the Costa del Sol into reality. I'm Warner Laurie, and I'm joined by my co-host and wife, Sandra Laurie.
Join us as we embark on navigating the ins and outs of real estate and relocation to this beautiful region.
We're not just about market trends, we're about sharing real-life experiences, because we know the struggle firsthand and I've helped many people navigate this challenge also.
If you're dreaming of your perfect Costa del Sol home and want to get real, no-frills, expert advice, then you're absolutely in the right place. Join us each week as we share honest insights and information that will guide your journey. Selling your Costa del Sol property shouldn't feel stressful or uncertain. But the truth is, we see many sellers wasting months, sometimes years, because they've been given the wrong advice or they just really don't have the right strategy. Warner has been helping people sell their properties here on the Costa del Sol for years, and he has seen exactly what works and what doesn't. So today, I'm questioning him on his golden rules for selling properties successfully, how to get the best price, how to avoid typical headaches, and how to actually enjoy the process.
Hi, Sandra.
Hi, Warner.
Another great podcast from the Costa Property Podcast. And I love this topic, how to sell your property, because over the years I've sold thousands of properties. And I love when I go there and explain to the seller how I can market the property and sell it. So I'm looking forward to this episode.
Yeah, and the inspiration behind this episode actually came from one of our clients recently who has had a property here for many years and had been looking for the right agency to sell her property. And she stumbled across us, registered for our seller's guide, had been listening to our podcast and reached out to us to market and sell her property. And during that process, she gave me some feedback that she felt there should be more information for people that want to sell their property. So you know who you are. Thank you for the inspiration for this episode. And we hope that we can answer, I guess, many of the questions that jump into people's heads when they are considering or entering into the early stages of selling their property, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I broke these down into the 4 golden rules that are the secret ingredients for selling your property.
Okay, so let's jump straight to it then. I guess, what's your golden rule number 1?
Golden rule number 1 is first impressions matter. So what does that mean, Sandra? So buyers, when they're interested to buy a property, they've been looking at property portals, they've been looking at different apartments, they've been doing their research before they come here. And most of the time when they're looking, you've seen the horror stories where you have a dog in the picture, the photos are very dark, they can't really imagine themselves being in that property. So it's not doing it justification because that could be their dream property, but the problem is it's not presented correctly. This is why when I go to my listing appointments, I always make sure that the owner understands the importance of having professional photography, importance about having videography, presenting the property the best way it can. And then obviously when we have the photos and we have that gives the wow factor for the client to say, wow, I want to go and see that apartment. I've seen it so many times when one seller has listed it with an agent and the agent hasn't followed that criteria, and then they come back to myself and they say, look, our property's not selling. And they send me the link And I say, well, no wonder the property's not selling. The pictures are too dark. You have your dog in it. You've not got the best photos of your view. The pictures some are portraits, some are landscaped, and even the write-up doesn't really give me the wow factor that I want to go and see your property. So all of that really helps the sellers to sell comfortably.
So what I'm hearing from you then is when people are selling their property, they need to make sure that from the very, very beginning that the property looks presentable to be photographed. Because if the photographs aren't good when people are browsing property portals or browsing our website, for example, to decide what properties that they want to look at, if the photos aren't good, well, basically they won't want to view the property. So it's really about understanding that people buy with their eyes and making sure that your videos and photographs, paint the right picture of your property so it entices people to come and see it. But I think as well, when you're preparing for your property to be photographed, it's important as well that you take clutter out of the rooms, remove kind of very personalised items so that they're not captured in the photographs, but it's just that you've got clean lines and clean spaces, because too much clutter in photographs, it's just a bad look.
Totally. I really tell my sellers, look, in order to sell this property, we need to really make sure that everything is clean lines.
Absolutely. I think it's just about imagining if you were going to buy the property, what would you expect to see and do? But we do give all of this advice in our seller's guide, what to think about from the very beginning. So it is useful for you if you are considering selling now or at some point in the future that you pop onto our website, www.WLCostaProperties.net, and you go to our resource section and you actually download our seller's guide. It's delivered straight to your email and it's packed with a lot of good information that you need to think about from a buyer's psychology point of view as well, so that you can really get your property positioned in the best way to sell it quickly. Okay, so tip number 2 then, Warner.
Tip number 2, and I think this is the most important one, is price it right from day one. There is a lot of real estate agents in the Costa del Sol. There's a lot of choice, and for our listeners that don't know, maybe in their own country they have to go with one real estate. Well, in Spain, you can go with as many real estates as you want. So what does that mean? It means there's a lot of competition, especially when there's more buyers than sellers at the moment. So supply and demand. So one agent could go out and value the property way over what it's worth, and another agent could go out and value the property at less. So it's really important that when we go to the listing appointment that we bring the information of what properties sold in the area, what properties are available in the area. Go to valuation portals like Idealista and Real Advisor, who give you specific market values, what it's worth, and they'll give you a minus to a positive. So in between there, the guidelines of where you're going to list the property. If you list it too high, unless it's the perfect property, first line beach, sea view, totally renovated, then you're going to have an issue because it's not going to sell.
Yeah, so it's important to get that pricing right from the very, very start. But this can be a very sensitive topic because, and I mean this from a point of respect, but often sellers do think that their property is worth more than it actually is. We get a little bit of bias and kind of the halo effect with it. We think, it's the absolute perfect property, and what we might think is good about that property is not necessarily what the buyer is going to look for. Can you give a bit more insight into this topic, Warner?
Okay, so when I go to a listing appointment, the first one's the introduction, okay? The person may contact me through WhatsApp or they may contact me through Facebook. When they contact me, I ask them, can you tell me a bit about your property? Can you give me the location and everything there? When I have this, I will go and do my investigation. For example, if the property is in the Royal de la Mail, I will look at different properties in that area in the Royal de la Mail and pick 3 that I think would be similar to that. Okay, after that, then I go and visit the property and look at it and compare it to the ones that I've had. So I compare it with views. Is it being renovated? What's the wow factor? And then I have a chat with the owner to find out what is your goal with this? What do you need? Do you need to sell it fast? What is your story? From that, then I go away and I have a think about it, and then I send them an email with comparables in the same area, and also valuations from 2 different portals where the property should be listed. 9 times out of 10, when I have that information, the owner is happy because I have the evidence that this is what the property is worth and this is what it will sell at. And probably 9 times out of 10, I can tell them what kind of buyer, depending on what area the property is listed in. So with that information, it brings confidence, and I really say, look, for me to list this property and to sell this property, I need the exclusivity because I want to list it my way. I want to bring a professional photographer, the videographer, the best social media. I want to market it and make sure that I'm doing it 100% justice. And for me, I need the exclusivity on this property in order for me to do that. And when I explain that to them, they're very happy to sign up because I'm putting my money where my mouth is, and I don't make money from properties being listed. I make money from properties being sold.
So let's jump to golden rule number 3 then. Target the right buyers, not just any buyers. Talk to us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so like every area that you have, wherever you have the property, so if you're close to the beach or you're up in the mountain, you need to look at who is my buyer and what kind of buyer do I have? Is this a cash buyer? Or is this a person that's going to buy? Is this a residential area? It's a person that's going to buy with a mortgage. So it's really important. Obviously, if it's a cash buyer and it's frontline beach, then, you're going to have somebody from outside Spain to buy it. Obviously, if you're in a residential area and you know that it's next to schools and hospitals and families, then you know that it's going to be a person that needs a mortgage. Not all the time, but about 90%, I would say that I'm correct on that. So how do we do this? With the right presentation, with the right photography, the videography, and also the service. How many times have you actually been with a client and they've said, I sent 20 inquiries out there and I released or different portals and nobody came back to me? The good thing about WL Costa Properties is we aim to get back to you. If we don't do it right away, we'll probably be back to you in 24 hours, which is amazing. So if people are on holiday, at least you can give them a service rather than them waiting 5 days for somebody to get back to them. I think it really makes WL Costa Properties number one, especially in Benalmádena, because if we have the property, we always contact the clients and we always make sure that they get those viewings to get the property sold.
When we do go out to value the apartment and you talk through the marketing strategy and explain to the seller who the buyer is for that apartment and how we're going to market it. So we do have our own system, our own structure that very, very clearly indicates to a seller who is going to be buying that property, because then they are very, very clear how we're going to market that property in order to get the property sold quickly, right? So it's not just about putting the property up on a property portal and doing hundreds and hundreds of viewings. That's time wasting. It's about positioning the property correctly so that we get the right buyer through the door.
Yeah, absolutely. Once we know the targeted buyer, then we can basically make the marketing campaign closer to that type of buyer so that we're attracting the most buyers so that they go and view the apartment, and we create a hype so that we can get the apartment sold where the seller's happy, the buyer's happy, and obviously we're happy because another property sold by WL Costa Properties.
Okay, can you give us any more on this?
We also have an amazing database of clients coming up to now 4,500, Sandra.
Yep, around that number.
Every property that we list, our database of clients get them first because these are the ones that are listening to our podcast, that are subscribing to our newsletter. They're really engaged, and we want to reward them for being our supporters. So if you're looking for the right property, maybe in 6 months or 1 year, anything like that, then the best thing to do is to be in our network, because you will get these exclusive properties first.
And we spend a lot of our time actually matching our listings to people that are already in our database, because we've got to know them so well over the last period of time, or how long they've been in our network, that we know what properties they're looking for. So we're able to match the property and our clients' expectations very early on, which often results in an efficient process for everybody concerned.
The idea for us is to basically, when we list a property, we have a buyer. That would be the perfect scenario for us, because then we don't really need to market it. We don't really need to there, because we already have the buyer. And all we need to do is contact the buyer and tell them, this is a property. We know you've been waiting 3 months, 6 months. I think this is a good one for you. And it's up to them to get on the plane and to come and see it.
Okay, Werner, so if we could go into then, your golden rule number 4 then, communication is everything. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, communication is everything. So every week when we have a property, maybe in a Saturday in the admin day or something like that, we look at all the properties on our database and we look at the stats, how many favourites have been there, how many inquiries have we had, what was the feedback from the people that viewed the properties, and we collaborate all that together and we give it back to the owners so that they know that they're 100% confident in what we are doing. And also it depends on their situation, because they're giving the power of attorney to the lawyer, they're giving us the keys to sell the property, so they're putting a lot of confidence in us to deliver it. So the least we can do is always to give them an update and tell them where they're at. And look, it's really good, because then you get the feedback, thanks very much, I know you're doing your best. So when we do find the buyer, then we can go back to all that feedback and you can say, look, this is what this person said, but this person is different and I think they're the perfect buyer. And we build a journey with them that when I say to them, this is your buyer, that they're 100% confident and they go with whatever's offer that the buyer has put forward.
Yeah, but it's also that we don't want to be that agent that lists the property and then it's crickets, that you hear nothing from us. Because let's be honest, some properties do take longer to sell than others. It's nothing to do with the property. It's nothing to do with how it's priced. It's nothing to do with the positioning. It's just, it might be a bit more particular and it might require a more particular type of buyer, which might mean that there isn't a surplus of those buyers on the market, and it might just take a little bit longer than the standard 6 to 8 weeks to move that property through the process. And that's fine too. But what I would say is that we don't want to be an agent that says, okay, we list your property, we promise you the sun, moon, and the stars, and then we don't get the flow through. It's crickets, you hear nothing from us, and you're left kind of scratching your head. So we do always try to, at least once a week, check in with the sellers, tell them what's going on. If we've had viewings, provide feedback of what the viewings liked, what they didn't like, so that we can do some expectation management as well. But also just to always stay in touch, paint the picture of what's happening in the market, and provide good, solid feedback about the property and what is appealing to buyers and what isn't appealing to buyers. And sometimes we might have to make small changes. We might have to recommend that something is fixed, something is painted, a room is decluttered, a garden is redone. And that's why this feedback dialogue that we have, it's so important that we always stay in touch.
Some examples, last month I had a deal going through that the communication had to be crystal clear, because we sold somebody's apartment, a 1-bedroom apartment, and then they wanted to buy a 3-bedroom townhouse that we had. And obviously then the people in the 3-bedroom townhouse wanted to buy another property. So this was the chain that we got. And the first person sold quite quickly. The second person couldn't find a property to buy. So this went on and on and on, what's happening because the one bedroom sold, and we were trying to look at what's the time frame for you to complete on your one, but make sure that you're not homeless to buy the other one. So that was really, really challenging. And they were lovely people and everything else. We were dealing with lawyers, we were dealing with them. But thankfully, last week, they got their homes, and we managed to do all the communication. We managed to make sure that they never were homeless, and they're now in their homes and they're happy. But for me as an agent, it was very challenging because I had WhatsApp groups with them, WhatsApp groups with the seller, WhatsApp groups with the lawyers, and we were all trying to navigate to make sure that everybody was happy. So that was really challenging, but we done it. And if it was another agent who said, who knows, maybe they would have fell by the wayside, they wouldn't have been unhappy, they wouldn't have got the completion. So it really took all my experience and all my energy to make sure that went through, because not only you're not treating with a seller and a buyer, you're dealing with emotions because they had this property for 10 years, they inherited this property. So you're dealing with all the emotions, and the other ones in the townhouse were pensioners. So it was a difficult situation, but we got there in the end, which was fantastic.
Okay, so just a quick recap then on your 4 golden rules. So we talked about first impressions matter. So if you are thinking of selling your property, start to look at your property objectively. Are there things that you can do now, like tidy up the garden? Is there a room that needs to be painted? Is there a damp spot that needs to be repaired? Remembering that buyers buy with their eyes is very, very important as you start to enter into this phase. We also talked about price it right from day one, being objective, so listening to the experts. So in Warner's case, when he provides the valuation reports, that you look at this objectively and not with your emotions, because if you don't price it correctly from the beginning, you are actually doing yourself and your property a disservice. Rule number 3, target the right buyers and not just any buyers. So it's very important that the agency that you choose to work with, like ourselves, has a clear marketing strategy for your property and understands who they're going to market your property to. Because we don't just want lots and lots of people viewing your property, because that's a waste of time for everyone. The property needs to be positioned correctly so that the right buyer comes through the door. And also finally, rule number 4, that communication is everything. Okay, we are not the agency that promises you the sun, moon and the stars, lists your property, and then you hear nothing from us. You will be guaranteed a steady flow of communication from us, weekly check-ins, updates, feedback from buyers, so that you're kept in the loop and you understand what's going on. And we really do feel passionate about keeping the flow of communication going so that you get a good service to help you feel in control of the process.
Yep, that's my 4 golden rules, and it's like baking a cake. If you don't have the right flour, the cake is not going to grow. So it's like the property. If you have the right ingredients, we can sell your property, and we've proven that. We've listed more properties this year, and we've also sold more properties this year than any other year. So it's looking like a bumper year. There's lots of properties, exclusive properties coming your way. Make sure that you, in our network, subscribe to our newsletter, make sure you do everything. Watch our podcast and watch the social media, because if you're looking to buy a property, then that one is coming to you soon.
I mentioned earlier in this episode that we have our seller's guide. I think this is a great resource that we created and crafted for you if you are selling your property. It's very easy for you to access this. We'll pop the link for the website into the show notes. Pop into the resource section, go to sellers, enter your email address, and download it. It will be delivered straight to your inbox. It's a great resource to support you when you are considering to sell your property. Also, whether you're thinking about selling or you're stuck with the market and you're a little bit fed up and you want some clarity, you can always book to have a chat and book to have a call with myself or Warner. No pressure, just expert advice. You can book a call using the link in the show notes to talk about selling your property. Or if you're just at the beginning stages, check out the link to the show notes and download our seller's guide to take the first steps. Thank you for stopping by, and we hope you found this episode useful. Thank you so much for listening into today's episode on the Costa Property Podcast. Another fantastic episode learning about the highs and lows of relocating to the Costa del Sol from real people who have been through the journey themselves and, of course, our wonderful experts. If you have been enjoying the show so far, remember to hit subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating or review.
We absolutely love hearing your thoughts. Please send any questions that you would like us to answer on the show to warner@WLCostaProperties.net, or you can pop us a message on our socials, which are in the show notes. Remember, you can also visit the website www.WLCostaProperties.net.
See you on the next episode, and bye for now.
Bye-bye.